Hello everyone, it's your host, Seth the Programmer, and with me today I have my son, 6. He's eaten a lot of Big Macs today. He's been a naughty boy. I put him into his room and I told him, listen here, son, you ate my fries when I went to go to the bathroom. Like, he eats too many fries as it is. I'm telling you, he eats at least 4,500 calories a day. It's a little bit much. He gets a little bit of a gravitational pull after we're done eating. And I was like, okay, I'll take you there, but you can't steal my fries this time. And he still stole them anyway. So I said, okay. In return for that, we're gonna record today. And he's like, okay, sure, okay. So he's stuck in his room for an hour. He did some research on Madara versus the 5 Kage, the new one. And today, we got you a pretty good video. So the reason this video is actually more interesting than you think, I know a lot of you are like, oh my god, here we go again. More Boruto beating up Naruto Shippuden. Well, we have good news. This matchup is actually pretty interesting. It is not a total stomp for what you'd expect. So yeah, you might actually enjoy this video a lot more than you think. So with that out of the way, we can kind of get started just with a little brief overview of the characters. Obviously, Madara is a character who previously was able to fight Hashirama Senju, the first Hokage, who is the ultimate shinobi in terms of Madara and Kabuto's opinions. He is pretty much considered the GOAT shinobi of Shippuden before the 6 Paths and 10 Tails characters. Of course, something interesting about that is back in the day when they did fight, 6 and I hypothesized that Madara might actually have been stronger than Hashirama a little bit, because Hashirama has an insane regeneration ability, and it's implied that he was actually forced to use it many times against Madara, whereas Madara, he can't regenerate, so it's implied Madara was kind of giving him the smoke, and then Hashirama would regenerate, and then they wore each other's stamina down, and Hashirama won. So it's interesting that someone who people think that might be able to contend with 10 Tails Obito, which I personally would say 6 Paths Obito is probably stronger than Hashirama, but it's interesting that he might be able to throw hands a little bit, that Madara might be a little bit stronger than that. He wouldn't beat Hashirama, but he's a little bit stronger than that. And then he gets Hashirama's Sage Mode ingrained into his skin, and then he gets 2 Rinnegan, the eyes of the Sage of the 6 Paths, which greatly amplify all his abilities and his powers, and then he absorbs his own 10 Tails, which put Obito as greater or contending with Hashirama to begin with, on top of that, and he gets 6 Paths, and then on top of that,
another Rinnegan.
He gets the other Rinnegan, and then he absorbs the God Tree, which is Kaguya's essence, which basically made him go from getting annihilated by base 6 Paths Naruto to Naruto requiring his 9 Tails Bijou Cloaks on top of their 6 Paths powers to even contend with him when he had 1 eye. And then when he gets 2 eyes, he's able to fight both of them with basically just Limbo clones. And then he gets a 3rd eye, which is confirmed to be a Rinnegan with Sharingan powers that can then cast the Infinite Tsukuyomi, as well as potentially allow him to transport between dimensions, which Kakashi refers to as godlike. So Madara basically achieves a godlike level of power that even makes the Sage of the 6 Paths, the GOAT of the series, basically say, wow, he's pretty much becoming me, and he's trying to become my mom, who could...
He's got power on par with me, and that's before, like, a lot of the amps Seth mentioned. So it's before the God Tree even, where he's like, oh, he's like getting around my level. So you could say if he's around Hagoromo's level, maybe Madara can reach that tier of like the Sage of the 6 Paths. I don't know, maybe not his prime, because in his prime he had the 10 Tails, all that, whatever. But you know, even getting to Hagoromo's level as a chakra ghost is like some crazy for Madara.
Yeah, and the whole Hagoromo versus Madara thing, that's a whole different topic, because obviously you'd have to debate about, okay, is Hagoromo, is the amps he gave Naruto and Sasuke actually like half his power just added on top of them, and that's why they're as strong as Madara or able to fight this god level Madara? Or did Hagoromo's 6 Paths power awaken things within them that also made them slightly stronger on top of getting Hagoromo's power, which makes the topic more subjective, such as, in example, say Hagoromo did give his six paths powers to Sasuke, that's all fine and good. Sasuke gets really, really strong. But what if, in result of that, Sasuke, on top of, say, Kabuto's Senjutsu-type chakras, awaken the Rinnegan, which then amps him even further, right? So that's a totally different discussion.
It's like implied that whenever you get close to death, that's when you awaken the Rinnegan. So maybe even getting Hagoromo's chakra didn't make Sasuke awaken it. It was just the fact that he got Hashirama's chakra, because Hashirama gave it to him, and Hagoromo's chakra, then got close to death that he got put up to get a Rinnegan.
And with Naruto's six paths, it's a little bit more mysterious. It's like the way it's described as if it's like some god-chosen power-up or something. So six paths is a little bit different for Naruto, the six paths Senjutsu form, where he has all mastery of nature and blah, blah, blah. That's a little bit different, but Sasuke's is a little bit more blatant, that it might not all be Hagoromo why they're able to fight Madara and Kage and all them. That's totally irrelevant, though. We just want to say that's where Madara is in Shippuden, or Part 2 of Naruto. He reaches a god-like level of status. Obviously, Kaguya is the progenitor and the ultimate force of nature, so obviously Madara nor anybody in original Naruto really competes with her. But Madara was basically the GOAT in terms of that part of Naruto. So the thing that makes this video interesting, though, is that the 5 Kage of Boruto, we've seen Madara fight the 5 Kage from Shippuden. They totally were not ready for anybody of Madara's caliber. However, the 5 Kage of Boruto are different because they have been they're obviously a lot stronger, but they've also potentially have been training for people like Kaguya, like Madara. They're a lot more prepared, and their circumstances are a lot different, which is why Sasuke even bothered bringing them against Momoshiki and Kinshiki, who would scare even Kaguya, right? That's why they're even relevant in that contest. So I guess you can get a little bit into their scaling.
So when it comes to the Kage and like scaling to Naruto and things like that, we know that they don't reach that tier of power. Like, they're not Naruto's level, because Fuse Momo just flattens the Kage. Like, he
one-shots them, basically.
They all get one shot, every single one of them. Yep. Chojuro, Kurotsuchi, I think, actually no, Chojiro's the only one that gets caught off guard, but it doesn't matter, because he's weaker than Kurotsuchi, who just gets one shot anyway. And then base Naruto is contending with like the same Fuse Momoshiki, right? He's not winning at all. Momo is clearly overpowering him, but he's not getting one shot like the other Kage. So when it comes to these other Kage getting as strong as these 6 paths tier of power, you have to take into account what type of like training did these Kage do to get so high? Because just having the thought in mind, like, oh, we need to prepare to fight people like Kaguya, people like Madara, and eventually Momo, doesn't mean that they can just reach that level, right? It's just like a goal they have in mind. Right. So do we go with the implication that, okay, maybe these Kage have Naruto level potential, possibly even higher, because they go from below Edo Madara to now what people would say is like Blitz levels over Madara's strongest form. And how did they get there? I personally just don't think it's that way. Me and Seth were talking about it a bit before the video, like how can these Kage scale to Momoshiki and Kinshiki, but like not be as powerful, if you will?
And there's a few ways to go about it in an interesting way. We need to look at what the facts of the matter are, okay? And obviously it kind of goes down to its roots, which is Momoshiki versus Kaguya, okay? The reason the Kage are in discussion is because they fight these characters, Kinshiki and Momoshiki, who Kaguya is creating the White Zetsu army for, right? So the problem with that, though, is the statement is somewhat vague. And what I mean by that is, yes, Kinshiki and Momoshiki, when they come to Earth, if they were to 2v1 Kaguya, somehow or some way, would probably defeat her, okay? But we don't really know how. Like, we don't know why or how. So it's a little bit more ambiguous than people like to make it out to be. So I'm in the firm camp that, yes, that duo would beat Kaguya.
Yeah,
but
the Zetsu army's not doing
they can't even fly. Like, they can't fly. Like, what would they do? Like,
they're getting Biju bombed or something.
Yeah. So yes, clearly Kaguya was scared of them. But there's a few reasons you can go into it. Now, in the Otsutsuki or Ishiki's palace, I don't know what you would call it, Ishiki's realm, where he keeps his 10 tails, there seems to be some type of hierarchy among their clan, which, in shocking terms, it actually implies, Ishiki's number 1, which we already assumed, Kinshiki's the bottom, and then Momoshiki and Kaguya are a similar level. But what's weird about this is that if Kaguya's a relative level to Momoshiki way back when, and Kaguya is implied to have gotten away from the clan and they can't keep updates on her, and then she becomes stronger, she becomes a lot stronger inside of her dimension, it might be a little bit more ambiguous. And some people theorize that it's not Momoshiki per se, maybe Momoshiki is rivaling Kaguya, but maybe it's the fusion of the two that then overpowers Kaguya. So it'd be the fusion Momoshiki that would defeat Kaguya. And a good example of this is obviously we then see Naruto and Sasuke, even though they're fatigued, they perform fusion themselves to defeat his golem, per se, as an example. So if that's the case, maybe there's more arguments that the Kage aren't necessarily, thrashing Kaguya. And a good reason for this as well is that Momoshiki's combat ability, this might get some hate, is actually questionable. The reason I say that is, now originally Momoshiki's original design was that he was very bad at taijutsu. That was his main thing in the novels and the original versions. He was bad at taijutsu. And then it seems like that was retconned for the Boruto Next Generation series, where now he's able to seemingly access the past generations of his clansmen that he's absorbed into his DNA, which lets him fight better. But there's another problem with that, which is that he absorbs Kinshiki, who was already a melee type to begin with. So that data that allows him to fight better, say in fused Momo form, where he's using Wing Chun or whatever and doing pressure points.
He's like up base Naruto.
Yeah, that could literally just be from Kinshiki's line that then is given to Momoshiki. And even when Boruto uses the karma mark, this is then debated if Boruto's karma only contains Momoshiki, or if it contains fusion Momoshiki, and if it's fusion Momoshiki, then fusion Momoshiki could contain Kinshiki's taijutsu-esque DNA, or, combat prowess. And if that's the case, you may be able to come to the conclusion that Kinshiki is just not as strong as Kaguya, and the Momoshiki who is, just isn't nearly as good as she is at close quarters, and that's why you say he's running away, trying to get distance on Darui and Gaara, trying to spam attacks or whatever, which, by the way, we never see him use a giant truth-seeking ball or any massive scale attacks like he shot at Naruto against these Kage. It's never shown. But that might be a reason why he's acting the way he is and acting weird. And it also might imply an ego check, which is similar to what Zamasu in his fusion form did in Dragon Ball Super, where he gets this massive power, and then he thinks the people in front of him aren't worth his true full powers, and then he gets blown back over and over again until he takes it seriously. And the similar thing might be with Momoshiki, and that's why he didn't launch, these expansive truth-seeking orbs at the 5 Kage or whatever have you, because he might think they're 2 below him, which is, there's a lot more context to it than you think. I'll let you speak. I spoke a lot there, but...
Do we even think Momoshiki can use Truth Seeker orbs? We know he can use Rinnegan rods, right? We see him.
It's debatable. Obviously, it's debatable.
Yeah.
I won't say it's concrete, but
it's a debatable thing as to if Momoshiki could do this. But you could say reasonably he should be able to. If he's Kaguya level, he's got the Rinnegan. The Rinnegan gives you access to all 5 chakra natures. I'm pretty sure Data Book 3 says that or something. So one of those data books say that. The Rinnegan gives you access to all 5 chakra natures. And that's what the Truth Seeker orbs are. They're just a big ball of every chakra nature. So yeah, I think Momoshiki definitely should be able to pull something like that off.
Even if he doesn't, he just never launches that giant Frieza death ball at them ever. You know what I mean? Like he did versus Naruto ever. Or at least that we've seen. So with that out of the way, so even if you say base Momo is fighting Kaguya, and it's a back and forth. Maybe you could argue Kaguya, if she's relative to him, would probably win because she's probably a better fighter or something like that. And she has more immortality hacks and blah blah blah, which she did use against Naruto and Sasuke. Wink, wink. A lot of times.
Tree of Earth,
Yeah, exactly. So if Madara's, kind of on par with Naruto and Sasuke, give or take, especially with the 3 eyes, he should be able to also fight Kage. Of course, he'd still lose. He'd lose, but he would be able to participate in that battle just like Naruto and Sasuke did, at least.
If anything, like beginning of the battle, Naruto, he's like kind of clashing with this Kage that's not trying to kill him. But Madara should be able to do even better in an exchange like that, because the only time we see Naruto doing anything against Madara is back when he had his 2 eyes, and it's against the Limbo clones, right? And Naruto's using his shadow clones, so you may be able to imply like Madara's holding back because they're shadow clones, or at least the Limbo clones are. They're like holding back because they're shadow clones. They don't really need to go all on their shadow clones. Madara's about to launch Infinite Tsukuyomi anyway, so they're just like, it, let's just fight a little bit, because they're not using any Rinnegan abilities, any Rinnegan rods, anything like that.
It's just pure taijutsu when we see it.
Then he gets his 3rd eye on top of that, which is more power, because we know that when you awaken your own eyes, they're like better than if you borrow someone else's or something like that. So Madara gets another 3rd eye that possibly contains like maybe 4 Jubies worth of chakra.
Yeah. You can go into why you think that is, by the way.
So
we had an interesting talk about that.
After Madara launches the Infinite Tsukuyomi, we see that some of the Tomo in his Rinne Sharingan are ripped away. And we know that the Tomo in your Rinne Sharingan get ripped away whenever you're low on chakra because of Sasuke, right? So when he goes up to launch the Infinite Tsukuyomi, he has, I think, 9. And when he comes back down, he has 6. And then the only way he gets them back is when Zetsu starts pumping these above Jubi levels of chakra that Naruto says Madara is getting. And that's when we see like the other 3 Tomo appear again. If you go like off that implication that each 3 Tomo set is another Jubi, then he possibly got like 3 to 4 times Jubi Imp just with his Rinne Sharingan. And we never get to see that Madara fight. So,
and the other thing too is obviously Madara felt he took Naruto and Sasuke seriously, but when he came down, he wasn't fearful or doubtful that he could defeat Naruto and Sasuke. And when he fights strong people, he's very respectful, actually, which people don't really realize. The reason he's really cocky a lot throughout the series is because he's fighting people who are basically ants. But when it comes to strong people, he is a lot more respectful, such as Hashirama. And then when he comes down to Naruto and Sasuke, he takes them seriously, but there's no fear at all. There's no doubt in his mind that he's going to solve this case. He thinks he's going to be able to do it based on what he's seen from them. Now, this is all a lot of introduction. This is like almost 20 minutes of introduction. I know you're like, where's the battle? This is all really important because a lot of people who don't know the Boruto Kage be like, what? Madara slams? Like, what? He just one-taps them. What?
Goes through them. They can't beat him. What?
Yeah. And then obviously, people who scale Boruto a lot, they will think that the Boruto Kage just choke slam him because they think, Darui should solo Kaguya and stuff like that,
That's the more edgy side of things. So.
Yeah. And, there's arguments to be had about it. I'm not saying it's true or false. But for the sake of this video, I think it's fair to say that there's a matchup to be had. Okay? So there's a good matchup to be had. But the problem is, if Madara can fight these Kage at all, like if he doesn't just get like blitzed, one shot, and sealed somehow,
he wins.
He unironically stomps them out. Like he stomps the current Kage out, which is what a lot of people don't realize. But let me read you something from the 4th data book on Madara's Limbo. So this is the description of his Limbo ability. So perceiving this phantom is impossible. The enemy's unpreparedness invites disaster. This statement applies, this is off quote, but this applies to the Kage because the Kage would not be prepared for Limbo. They'd have no counter to it whatsoever. They would not be able to see it or interact with Limbo clones. A person who possesses the Rinnegan can intervene in an adjacent world, in an extremely distant world. In that place, a shadow is produced, which everyone who is connected with the current world can't feel, so they can't interact with them. Not only will the jutsu user gain a duplicate of himself with equal ability, but it will also be invisible. So that means we have 4 invisible Madaras that are all equal to himself, and probably have all of his Rinnegan abilities as well. Probably. Squaring off against a user, counterattack is impossible. Going against this ability will result in one losing against such a powerful enemy. when fighting the enemy in close combat, the shadow will stay away, but after a time, the shadow will return. So basically, if the idea of the limbo is that if your opponent is caught off guard and will be defeated, then Madara will defeat the Kage rather easily, because all he has to do is have the limbo clones sneak up on them, even if they expected it. What do? They can't interact with it.
Yeah, they can't do anything.
They literally can't do anything, even if they want to do something about it.
None of the Kage have a Rinnegan, and it's not implied they have like 6 paths level awareness. Even if you do think they got to like the 6 paths tier power, they don't have this 6 paths level of universal awareness. What does it say? Naruto can command like everything in nature.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Like,
Yeah, it
they
goes
don't
crazy.
have that type of awareness, so they just can't interact with Limbo in any way other than not with it. Cause Sakura like punches it, but it doesn't do anything.
You could also might be able to imply that Madara can kind of command them to block attacks. It's weird. It's a weird ability. But basically, all Madara has to do is use a Truth-Seeking Rod to stab them all in the back at the same time, because there will be 4 of them. We're not including Naruto in this Kage list, obviously. But should have clarified that at the beginning. I might make like an asterisk or something. But Limbo clone for each Kage. He might also be able to soul sap every single one of them, which we've never seen any of them really have a soul resistance at all. It might, the soul resistance thing might be something more of like Jinchuriki-like, although we see Orochimaru kind of do it, but he might also have a special ability to do it as well. It's very ambiguous. But basically, Madara could soul sap them off guard. He could Truth-Seeking Rod them off guard. He is completely immortal with his third eye. They have no sealing jutsu that would really be able to work on him due to the fact that he can absorb all of it. The only way they really conceivably can win is if they somehow beat him down so bad he has no chakra, and then somehow find a way to seal him if he's like unconscious or something from lack of chakra, which if he's relative to them is very unlikely, because he can not only absorb their chakra upon contact like Sasuke did to Naruto or what Nagato did to Killer Bee, but he can absorb their jutsu endlessly as well, which they do use jutsu. And there's just so many win cons. He also has poison spores from Hashirama. He still has Hashirama Sage mode. He still has his wood style. He has the Limbo clones that all can use those abilities as well as the fact that we don't even know how strong his Susanoo would be either.
Bro, that's what I wanted to mention earlier. Like, he never uses his perfect Susanoo when he's 6 paths.
Because we see Sasuke's Susanoo versus Kaguya, but that doesn't mean that's how strong Naruto's Kyuubi mode would be, or Madara's Susanoo would be. Because the thing about Sasuke's abilities is that Sasuke's abilities, when he first gets them in 6 paths, and I described this before, is that Sasuke doesn't actually have mastery or his full powers when he first obtains them. Naruto does. So while Naruto is kind of gradually getting weaker fighting Kaguya, using all his abilities, his Truth-Seeking Rod or whatever, Sasuke is mastering his Rinnegan and gaining abilities as he learns how to use them, which is kind of the dynamic they had. So Madara might actually be stronger than Sasuke was versus Kaguya, so even that Susanoo that fought Kaguya probably wouldn't even be a good representation of Madara to begin with, on top of the fact that we think Third Eye might be stronger than them anyway.
Exactly.
So there's so many weird things that Madara has that makes it really hard for the Kage to win. But the real icing on the cake is just, he could just infinite Tsukuyomi, and like it would be in character. And we have never seen any counters or notable things or Genjutsu resistance that these 4 Boruto Kage have done at all. So
yeah, literally just like the same argument I gave for like them not having this 6 paths level of awareness. They shouldn't have Rinnegan level normal eyes or something to resist.
Like, they have Datara trained eyes for the infinite Tsukuyomi.
And Datara's didn't even work, so it doesn't even matter. Like they're just not, they're not countering infinite Tsukuyomi. And then on top of that, if we just like talk about them running Madara out of chakra, this is just unrealistic. Like, there is no world in which you can say the Kage each individually have more chakra than the Jubi. In fact, they don't even have more chakra than Kurama, because Momoshiki was looking all over Earth for all this chakra, and he's like, I need that one right there.
The 8 tails had more than them too.
And the 8 tails, yeah, he went to the 8 tails first. So
yeah,
the Kage don't have that crazy Jubi level of chakra. Madara possibly has, I lost count, 7
multiple times Jubi levels of power and chakra. So
yeah. them running Madara out of chakra is just not realistic. So what you really get is just, it's impossible for them to win. Like they literally can't do anything.
It's just not likely unless you think that they're like just insanely more powerful. And the only way you really get that is if you really overinterpret Momoshiki versus Kaguya to be like, yeah, base Momo just absolutely blitzes and just flicks her in the forehead like Beerus versus Goku and she dies or something, like, yeah. Which is just not implied at all.
Not implied anywhere. Like,
in anything.
Even the Momo over Kaguya statements don't get you there. Like, they don't get you to Momoshiki's gonna descend from the heavens and like forehead tap Kaguya and she's gonna die. Like, you don't get that implication from anything other than like edgy power scaling.
Yeah, it's if anything, it's just arbitrarily stronger, which could be like maybe he outputs 1 more joule of energy or something. But like we literally we just don't know. It's just too ambiguous. But anyway, that's really all there is to say. I hope you guys did enjoy this video. When I was first thinking about this, I was like, oh man, am I really gonna make a video on why the Kage from Boruto stomp Madara is gonna make people mad? But then when we talked about it, we're like, that's kind of more interesting than I thought. I like the outcome a little bit. Yeah, Madara is actually pretty cool. I'm glad that there's a way to interpret Madara to be relevant in Boruto to this day, and I thought it was cool. So I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. Be sure to subscribe to 6, and of course me. Get me to 1 million. Hello? I'm almost there. And thank you for watching. Yeah, and till next time.